Full Dark, No Stars. We're going to start on the first story because you know what? I realized something. Going through my old videos on my old page, I realized I was like, I never actually finished this. And starting fresh really kind of gives us the opportunity to go over it again, refresh all that jazz because it's been a while. Anyway, I ain't going to talk too much longer. Let's just get into it. April 11th, 1930. Magnolia Hotel, Omaha, Nebraska. To whom it may concern, my name is Wilfred Leland James, and this is my confession. In June of 1922, I murdered my wife, Arlette Christina Winters James, and hid her body by tucking it down an old well. My son, Henry Freeman James, aided me in this crime. Although at 14 he was not responsible, I cozened him into it, playing upon his fears and beating down his quite normal objections over a period of 2 months. This is a thing I regret even more bitterly than the crime, for reasons this document will show. The issue that led to my crime and damnation was 100 acres of good land in Hemingford Home, Nebraska. I was willed to my wife by John Henry Winters, her father. I wished to add this land to our freehold farm, which in 1922 totaled 80 acres. My wife, who never took to farming life, or to being a farmer's wife, wished to sell it to the Farrington Company for cash money. When I asked her if she truly wanted to live downwind from a Farrington's hog butchery, she told me we could sell the farm, as well as her father's acreage, my father's farm, and his before him. When asked what we might do with money and no land, she said we would just move to Omaha, or even St. Louis and open a shop. I will never live in Omaha, I said. Cities are for fools. This is ironic, considering where I now live. But I will not live here for much longer. I know that as well as I know what is making the sounds I hear in the walls, and I know where I shall find myself after this earthly life is done. I wonder if hell can be worse than the city of Omaha. Perhaps it is the city of Omaha, but with no good country surrounding it, only a smoking, brimstone, stinking emptiness full of lost souls just like myself. I won't lie to you. We argued bitterly over that 100 acres during the winter and spring of 1922. Henry was caught in the middle, yet tended more to my side. He favored his mother in looks, but me in his love for the land. He was a biddable lad, with none of his mother's arrogance. Again and again he told her that he had no desire to live in Omaha or any city, and would only go if she and I came to an agreement, which we never could. I thought of going to the law, feeling sure that as the husband in the matter, any court in the land would uphold my right to decide the use and purpose of that land. Yet something held me back. 'Twas not fear of the neighbors' chatter. I had no care for country gossip. 'Twas something else. I had come to hate her, you see. I had come to wish her dead, and that was what held me back. I believe that there is another man inside of every man, a stranger, a conniving man. And I believe that by March of 1922, when the Hemingford County skies were white and every field was a snow-scrimmed mudsuck, the conniving man inside Farmer Wilfred James had already passed judgment on my wife and decided her fate. 'Twas justice of the black cap variety, too. The Bible says that an ungrateful child is like a serpent's tooth, but a nagging and ungrateful wife is ever so much sharper than that. I am not a monster. I tried to save her from the conniving man. I told her that if we could not agree, she should go to her mother's in Lincoln, which is 60 miles west, a good distance for a separation, which is not quite a divorce, yet signifies dissolving of the marital corporation. And leave you my father's land, I suppose, she asked, and tossed her head. How I'd come to hate that pert head toss, so like that of an ill-trained pony, and the little sniff which always accompanied with. That will never happen, Wilf. I told her that I would buy the land from her if she insisted. It would have to be over a period of time, at least 8 years, perhaps 10, but I would pay her every cent. A little money coming in is worse than none, she replied, with another sniff and a head toss. This is something every woman knows. The Farrington Company will pay all at once, and their idea of top dollar is apt to be far more generous than yours. And I will never live in Lincoln. 'Tis not a city, but only a village with more churches than houses. Do you see my situation? Do you understand the spot she put me in? Can I not count on at least a little of your sympathy? No? Then hear this. In early April of that year, 8 years to this very day, for all I know, she came to me all bright and shining. She had spent most of the day at the beauty salon in McCook, and her hair hung around her cheeks in fat curls that reminded me of the toilet rolls one finds in hotels and inns. She said she had an idea. It was that we should sell the 100 acres and the farm to the Farrington Combine. She believed they would buy it all just to get her father's piece, which was near the railway line. And I'll be honest, she was probably correct. Then, said this saucy vixen, we can split the money, divorce, and start new lives apart from each other. We both know that's what you want. As if she didn't. Ah, I said, as if giving the idea serious consideration. And with which of us does the boy go? Me, of course, she said wide-eyed. A boy of 14 needs to be with his mother. I began to work on Henry that very day, telling him that his mother's latest plan was going to be her grandest. We were sitting in the haymow. I wore my saddest face and spoke in my saddest voice, painting a picture of what his life would be like if his mother was allowed to carry through with her plan. How he would have neither home nor his father. How he would find himself in a much bigger school, all his friends, most since babyhood, left behind. How once in the new school, he would have to fight for a place among strangers who would laugh at him and call him a country bumpkin. On the other hand, I said if we could hold on to all the acreage, I was convinced we could pay off the note at the bank by 1925 and live happily, debt-free. Breathing sweet air instead of watching pig guts float down our previously clear stream from sunup to sundown. Is this what you want, son? I asked, after drawing this picture in as much detail as I could manage. To stay here with you, father, he said. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. Why does she have to be such a... Go on, I said. The truth is never cussing, son. Such a bitch. Because most women are, I said. It's an incredible part of their natures. The question is, what are we going to do about it? But the conniving man inside had already thought of the old well behind the cow barn. The one we only used for slop water because it was so shallow and murky. Only 20 feet deep and little more than a sluice. It was a question of bringing him to it. And I had to. Surely you see that. I could kill my wife, but must save my lonely son. To what purpose the ownership of 180 acres, or 1,000, if you have no one to share them with and pass them on to? I pretended to be considering Arlette's mad plan to see good corn land turned into a hog butchery. I asked her to give me more time to get used to the idea, and she assented. During the next 2 months, I worked on Henry, getting him used to a very different idea. It wasn't as hard as it might have been. He had his mother's looks. A woman's looks are the honey, you know, that lure men into the stinging hive, but not her god-awful stubbornness. It was only necessary to paint a picture of what his life would be like in Omaha or St. Louis. I raised the possibility that even those two overcrowded ant heaps might not satisfy her. She might decide only Chicago would do. Then, I said, you might find yourself going to high school with black niggers. Yeah, that sounds about right. Real scary. He grew cold toward his mother after a few efforts, all clumsy, all rebuffed, to regain his affections. She returned the chill, or rather the conniving man rejoiced at this, and I know I did. In early June, I told her that after great consideration, I had decided I would never allow her to sell those 100 acres without a fight, that I would send us all to the beggary and ruin it if that was what it took. She was calm. She decided to take legal advice of her own, for the law, as we know, will befriend whoever pays it. This I foresaw and smiled at, because she couldn't pay for such advice. By then I was holding back to what little cash money we had. Henry even turned his piggy bank over to me, and when I asked, so she couldn't steal from that source. Paltry as it was, she went of course to the Farrington Company office in Deland, feeling quite sure, as was I, that they who had so much to gain would stand good her legal fees. They will, and she'll win. I told Henry this with the utmost confidence. From what had become your usual place of conversation in the haymow, I was not entirely sure of how he would take this. But I had already taken to my decisions, which I will not go so far as to call a plan, but it was what I had. But Papa, that's not fair, he cried, sitting there in the hay. He looked very young, more like 10 than 14. Life never is, I said. Sometimes the only thing to do is to take the thing that you must have, even if someone gets hurt. I paused, gauging his face. Even if someone dies. He went white as a sheet. Papa, if she was gone, I said, everything would be the way it was. All the arguments would cease. We would live happily and here peacefully. I've offered her everything I can to make her go. But she won't relent. There's only one other thing I can do. One other thing that we can do. But I love her. I love her too, I said. Which, however little you might believe it, was true. The hate I felt toward her in the year of 1922 was greater than a man can feel for any woman unless love is a part of it. And bitter and willful though she was, Arlette was a warm-natured woman. Our marital relations had never ceased, although since the arguments about the 100 acres began, our grapplings in the dark had become more and more like animals running. It needn't be painful, I said. When it's over, well, I took him out back to the barn and showed him the well, where he burst into bitter tears. No, Papa, not that. No matter what, not that. But when she came back from Deland, Harlan Cottery, our nearest neighbor, carried her most of the way in his Ford, leaving her to walk the last 2 miles. And Henry begged her to leave off so we can just be a family again. She lost her temper, struck him across the mouth, and told him to stop begging like a dog. Your father's infected you with his timidity. Worse, he's infected you with his greed. As though she were innocent of that sin. The lawyer assures me the land is mine to do with as I want, and I'm going to sell it. As for the two of you, you can sit here and smell roasting hogs together, and cook your own meals and make your own beds. You, my son, can plow all day and read his everlasting books all night. They've done him little good, but you may get on better. Who knows? Mama, that's not fair. She looked at her son as a woman might look at a strange man who had presumed to touch her arm, and how my heart rejoiced when I saw him looking back just as coldly. You can go to the devil, both of you. As for me, I'm going to Omaha and opening a dress shop. That's my idea of fair. This conversation took place in the dusty dooryard between the house and the barn, and her idea of fair was the last word. She marched across the yard, raising dust with her dainty town shoes, went into the house and slammed the door. Henry turned to look at me. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and his lower lip was starting to swell. The rage in his eyes was of the raw, pure sort that only adolescents can feel. It is rage that doesn't count the cost. He nodded his head. I nodded back, just as gravely. But inside, the cunning man was grinning ear to ear. That slap was her death warrant. 2 days later, when Henry came to me in the new corn, I saw he had weakened again. I wasn't dismayed or surprised. The years between childhood and adulthood are gusty years. Those living through them spin like the weathercocks of some farmers in the Midwest used to put atop their grain silos. We can't, Papa. She's in error, and Shannon says those who die in error go to hell. God damn that Methodist church and the Methodist Youth Fellowship, I thought. But the conniving man only smiled. For the next 10 minutes, we talked theology and the green corn, while early summer clouds, the best clouds, the ones that float like schooners, sailed slowly above us, trailing their shadows like wakes. I explained to him that, quite the opposite of sending Arlette to hell, he would be sending her to the heavens. For, I said, a murdered man or woman dies, not in God's time, but in man's. He, or she, is cut short before he, or she, can atone for sin. And so all errors must be forgiven. When you think of it that way, every murder is a gateway straight to heaven. But what about us, Papa? Wouldn't we go to hell? I gestured to the fields, brave with new growth. How can you say so when you see heaven all around us? Yet she means to drive us away from it, as surely as the angel with the flaming sword drove Adam and Eve from the garden. He gazed at me, troubled, dark. I hated to darken my son in such a way, yet a part of me believed then, and believes still, that it was not I who did it to them, but she. And think, I said, if she goes to Omaha, she'll dig herself an even deeper pit and shoal. If she takes you, you'll become a city boy. I never will, he cried. He cried this so loudly the crows took flight from their fence line and swirled away into the blue sky like charred paper. You're young and you will, I said. You'll forget all this. You'll learn city ways and begin digging your own pit. If he had returned by saying that murderers had no hope of joining their victims in heaven, I might have been stumped. But either his theology did not stretch so far, or he didn't want to consider such a thing. And is there hell, or do we make our own here on earth? But to consider the last 8 years of my life, I lean towards the latter. How, he asked. When? I told him. We can go on living hereafter? I said we could. And it won't hurt her? No, I said. It'll be quick. He seemed satisfied. And still, it might not have happened, if not for Arlette herself.